Well, good morning. I am your substitute pastor. We will not call me Pastor Wes. We'll call me guest speaker. I have no doctorate in anything like Pastor Todd. He has like 22 doctorates. Is it up to now, Raul? I believe so. Working on another one. I think that's why he's gone. So he is gone today, but I am here to talk to you a little bit about work and work ethic. And I decided to emulate the substitute teacher, because technically that's what I am right now. I'm a substitute pastor for you guys. And really, what's the end goal of that job? What is the end goal? I look at it sometimes this way, which is probably the wrong way to look, is I look at it as, don't do so bad a job that people walk out, but do just good enough to where people miss Pastor Todd. Like, that's my goal in this mission most of the time. But you see, it's kind of like a substitute teacher. How many of us had a substitute teacher that played a video? That just walked in, just barely even said their name. I'm so-and-so, wrote it on the board, hit the video, and they played on whatever while you watched a video. How many were excited when a substitute teacher came in? But why? Why were you excited? Didn't have to listen to him. No respect. No respect for the substitute teacher. They thought, I can get away with anything today. That's what we thought. And the substitute teacher, a lot of them, they didn't care either. They felt like they were glorified babysitters. And that's tough. How do you find your importance in your job sometimes? Everybody has different jobs, and when we do different things, I look at other jobs and think, wow, that's an amazing job. That person must be so passionate about their work because they do great things. And then there's other jobs where you look at it and you're like, that's a menial job. Why would anybody want to do that? How do you get up every morning and want to do that job? And really, when you think about it, we should all be thrilled about doing our jobs because we're getting money for it. Okay, remember your first job? Remember when you did your first job? Maybe you were nervous. I mean, could have been cutting grass, or could have been actually working at a restaurant or a fast food place. And you were probably nervous that first time, and you got through that first week, and then you got that paycheck. And you were excited. You're like, I'm making money. We don't feel that way after like week 4. We feel like, I got to go in there again. How do we stay passionate about our work? I mean, I'm in plumbing. How am I supposed to be passionate about poop? Like, how am I, as a person that deals with that, supposed to be passionate about that work? How do I go to somebody's house and be like, I can't wait to unclog whatever you put down there? How do we do that? And let's not just think about work that you get paid for. There is work that you do for free. You're probably even less passionate about that. When you volunteer. Here at this church, we depend on volunteers. We don't have a building where we have a paid janitorial staff to clean up. We can't leave this stuff here. We have to tear it down. We have to set it up. We have so much to do. And week in and week out, I'll be honest, especially in the summer times, I don't see the passion on many people's faces. I see like, I'm here again, because it wears you out. It's tiring. And there's other things that people lose passion in. We have a couple right now that are about to have a baby. When's the due date again, JoJo? The 23rd of December, Christmas baby. Watch out. Lots of presents. They're excited now. They're passionate. I'm sure JoJo is excited to get this baby out of her because I'm sure it's getting tiring. But then there's all those new firsts, and it's just so exciting. And Jeff and JoJo are going to be a new mom and dad, and they're going to have all these great first experiences that a lot of parents here have already gone through. But then there gets into this daily mundane routine of being a parent. And I'm going to warn you now, there will be days that you're going, why did I take this road? I told my wife the other week actually, I said, I realized something. Every morning and every evening before I had kids was stress-free. Before you have kids, you get up when you want. I mean, when you got to be at work and all that, you get up, maybe drink your coffee, maybe watch the news or something, or in my case, SpongeBob. And then you get ready for work and you go to work. Translate that to now, every day for us is stress-filled in the morning. it's constantly, get ready, get ready, get ready, out the door, and like yelling all the time. I think Jen and I have yelled more in the last 3 years than we've ever yelled in our entire lives because the kids just don't want to get ready. How do you stay passionate about being a parent when you have to hit that wall day after day after day? I'm so sorry to reveal all this to you now that you're too far gone. It's tough. In fact, I blew it as a parent this last week. My daughter was pushing me. And for anybody that knows my daughter, she's a very good girl. I mean, I'm complaining about two very good kids. They're very well behaved, but my daughter is a daydreamer when it comes to getting her shower. And I will walk in, and there she is, just water hitting her and just not getting ready. And she's constantly late to bed. Constantly late. And it drives me nuts, and it was happening all week until, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday night, I lost it. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, yelling at her, telling her basically she'll never see the sunrise again. I mean, like, I was just so mad at her. Because I was fed up, because I didn't have any passion for being a father. I didn't take the time to really nurture a better version of Charlotte. I just didn't care at that point. There was no passion about being a parent. So how do we stay passionate about our work? To get this answer, we're going to actually look in the book of Nehemiah. And for those that don't know who Nehemiah is, he was a captured by the Persian king. He was actually a cupbearer of the Persian king, but he was an Israelite. And he had gotten word that his city his hometown had been ransacked, the walls had been broken down, the gates had been burned, and his people were suffering. And he cried and he fasted, because imagine being taken away from your family and then you're hearing that horrible things are happening to them while you're gone. Well, during this time that he was away, he found favor with the king of Persia, and so he asked him, he said, "May I please go to my hometown and help rebuild?" And because he had favor with the king, he let him go so that he could rebuild. And so we start off in Nehemiah chapter 4. And in this is fast-forwarded a lot. We've gone from king's favor to Nehemiah going and surveying the walls and the damaged doors all around the city, and then formulating a plan and enacting that plan and getting everybody in the city on board. So we're past a lot of steps right now. We're right now in the middle of the building. And this is where we start off, because there are other factions, other tribes that do not like this wall being built. This is a threat to them. They're the ones that burned it down the first time, so they are threatening to burn it down a second time. In verse 4, when Sanballat, who's another tribe, heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews. Verse 2, and in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, "What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Understand, building a wall is very time-consuming and expensive. So imagine trying to do it back then, when we didn't have as many heavy equipment tools and technology. You had to use a lot more people to do that. And so this Samaritan was basically mocking them, going, "There's no way. The amount of destruction we caused on you, there is no way you guys can get this done." Now, I'm going to read a couple more verses, but I'm going to skip some. Pastor Todd and I went over these verses, but as I was reading and studying this, I realized there was a big chunk of the story missing. And I'm going to read some of that to you that's not going to be on the screen, but I'm going to go through it. But for the time being, skipping to verse 6, after Nehemiah pleaded with God to hear his word, to hear his prayers about being protected during the building of this wall. Verse 6, "So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. The people with all their heart. Verse 7, but when Sanballat, Tobiah, and the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the men of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. Again, and I'm paraphrasing, again, they started mocking them, threatening them, telling them they're going to send their forces, getting ready their armies. And so what it did was it caused Nehemiah's people to be very scared and worried, going, we can't build a wall and protect ourselves. This is going to be very difficult. So then something happened that became very important. Verse 12. Then the Jews who lived near them came over and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. Therefore, I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. Verse 14. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, and your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Verse 15, when our enemies heard that we were aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to his own work. And it goes on to talk about some of those details, about people jumping in and helping with the protection, others helping with the building of the wall, and how this basic machine started to grow out of these people because they were working towards a goal. Now we're skipping over to Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 15. Basically skipping ahead to the end of it. 15, so the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. When all our enemies heard about this, all the surrounding nations were afraid and lost their self-confidence because they realized that this work had been done with the help of our God. So we read some in there about how they were scared because they were being threatened, and then they, brought up their forces, and they did an impossible thing and basically warded off their enemies just by their show of commitment. The funny thing is we glossed over chapter 3. We skipped over chapter 3. There's a reason Pastor Todd skipped over chapter 3, but I'm going to read some anyways. This is called the builders of the wall, and this is not going to be on the screen. This is basically the very mundane details of how the wall was built. After Nehemiah made a plan and he implemented it, what people did. Verse 1, Eliashib, the high priest, and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep gate. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the Tower of the 100, which they dedicated, and as far as the Tower of Hananel. The men of Jericho built the adjoining section, and Zakur, son of Imri, built next to them. Let's move on. The Jeshanah gate was repaired by Jodiah, son of Pesha, and Melishasham, and son of Balubadabada. They set its beams and laid its beams and put its doors and bolts and bars in place. Next to them, repairs were made by the men of. All right, I challenge you to read this chapter and not fall asleep. It is the most boring sounding chapter. It's almost like in the New Testament when we learn about the lineage of Jesus, and that person begat that person, and that person begat that person, and you're like, why am I hearing about this? The reason that they even wrote that in there is for historical record. But guys, that mundane part, that boring day-to-day part of what those people did is how we got to a built wall. The reason that's important, those details, is because those were what got us to victory. Those were what got Nehemiah's people to build the wall. That's what scared away their enemies, the dedication, the passion. So to answer this question of how do we stay passionate about our work, the answer is all good work is important in the big picture. All good work is important in the big picture. So the key verse here is this. We're in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 12. The body is a unit, though it is made up of many parts, and though all its parts are many, they form one body. So it is with Christ. Your mundane, your daily progress of what you do, in spite of you thinking that it's useless or it's not fun or exciting, is important in the big picture. You need to understand, when you go to work, you're important if you're getting paid. When you're being paid, it means your boss says, I value the work you do. Unless you have a really bad boss and it's like, the government's forcing me to pay you, then don't work for that person. But when you get money for work, that's important, okay? You're being told you're valuable. You're part of the big picture. I'm in plumbing. How do I stay passionate about poop? I don't. I stay passionate about the people that I serve. My industry, basically, and not to gloat on what I do, protects the health of the nation. And I know that sounds weird, but you understand, before indoor plumbing, there was outdoor plumbing and rivers of plumbing. Go to a third world country, they still have rivers of poop. It's dangerous, it's infectious, it can get you sick and kill you in certain times. So what we do has helped us to better the nation, be more cleanly. Electricians, I've got a light staring me right in the face. If not, we'd be doing this outside. We got these screens, the technology. Those things are important. What Raul does with working for, what is it, Verizon? What do you work? Working with AT&T. That's important, okay? Telecommunications. We couldn't communicate around the world if it wasn't for people that do that job every day. Look at the people from FPL. FPL, hey, you know what? We complain about our bills, and yes, they do get high sometimes, but look at all the FP&L men and women right now up in the panhandle bringing power back to people who desperately need it. You see, they're part of something bigger than themselves. This church, I know it's hard to keep passion in this church. I know that. Because week in, week out, the tearing down, the setting up, sometimes we don't see a lot of people here. Sometimes that gets us down. I'm sure it gets Pastor Todd down. He wonders if he's reaching anybody. But you understand, is every time you set a chair up, every time you tear something down at the end, every time you greet somebody, you are part of something bigger than you. That should be the passion. Volunteering. You ladies do a great job with those kids. You are part of something bigger because those kids at the end of the day are part of the big picture. Being a parent, Jeff and JoJo, although it is a passionless job sometimes, being a parent is so important because you are part of something way bigger than yourself. You are part of setting up the next generation. Something I forget from time to time when I'm dealing with my children on a day-to-day basis. So parents, don't forget. Don't forget that you are part of something bigger. You are raising somebody who is possibly going to affect change in this world. Do that with a passion. Raise them, grow them, mold them. And for anybody that in the second service might come here and you know, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in Jesus, and they go, what is this all about? You know, this passion, you know, how am I supposed to have a passion in my daily life? Let me tell you something. Every time you come across another lost soul, you need to have a passion for them. Because they're part of your daily life. Because you're part of something bigger when you accept Jesus Christ. You're part of the biggest thing in this world. It's tough to stay passionate about our faith when we are literally surrounded by the faithless. When we are literally in Miami-Dade surrounded by people who could not care less. And we shouldn't be mad at them and we shouldn't have disdain for them. And I think that's what a lot of people, it becomes us versus them. But at the end of the day, it's us versus Satan. And Satan is trying to keep them. You see, if we stay passionate, we could win them over. If we do this week in and week out, if we help with missions, if we volunteer, if we keep that passion, we are creating something bigger than ourselves. And that is an opportunity for others to say yes to Jesus. And that is a big deal. I love being part of things bigger than myself. I love being part of my job. I love being a parent. I like being a husband. And I love being part of a church for people who don't go to church. Let's continue to keep those passions as we go week in and week out. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you so much for blessing us. Thank you for giving us more than we could ever need, Lord, as far as your love and generosity. But Lord, sometimes we become complacent with that love and generosity. We become complacent in our jobs, as parents, as couples, as students, as teachers. Lord, I pray that you would please put the fire back in us so that we can be passionate about the things that are bigger than us, so that we can continue this train rolling down the station as we're all part of one big machine to honor you. Lord, I thank you and I praise you for everything that you've given us. In Jesus' name, amen.